What's up, guys? Welcome to the Sesh. Today I have a very special guest. Drew, introduce yourself. Tell everybody what you do.
Right on. My name is Drew Lentz. Online, people find me at the Wireless Nerd, so wirelessnerd.net on Twitter and Instagram and all those socials. I'm Wireless Nerd. I have a nonprofit organization that we founded in the Rio Grande Valley about 10 years ago called Code RGV, and we specialize in technology education, training, robotics, VR, all kinds of stuff, supplementing educational resources in the Rio Grande Valley for students who are interested in becoming better nerds. Building better nerds is our theme. I've also got a great career. Right now I work for Cisco Systems, the largest networking equipment manufacturer in the world. Previous to this, I worked at Meta for about a year working on a project to connect the unconnected. And then the last 5 years before that, working for one of the largest cable operators in North America. But all in all, I've been involved in connectivity in some ways since I was about 14, building the first internet service providers down here in the RGV.
So I'm super interested in this because the internet has literally changed my life since 2015, since I gotten it, right?
A little bit, I would say.
But I'm fascinated with it because I feel like the Rio Grande Valley is always behind. And I ran into your article on LinkedIn, and then I watched it on YouTube. Kind of touch on the subject of what you were talking about with that.
Yeah. So, man, it's going to take a minute. I get real passionate real quick. So, I cue the world's smallest violin, right? I grew up in a colonia outside of Mercedes. And my claim to fame that I tell everyone is that I was the only kid with indoor plumbing, right? And I used to get real jealous of my friends because every year they would go on these trips, man. My neighbor Carlitos would go up and he would go to Iowa and he'd go to Kansas and he'd go to, all these states. And I was like, man, this kid gets to go everywhere. I don't get to go anywhere. Like I go back and forth from here to Arkansas where my mom's family's from. Like I want to go to these great states. Well, dude, he was a migrant field worker. And I didn't know that as a kid. I was just like, dude, that guy gets to travel, But the simplicity of being a kid, right? I grew up in that environment, and I grew up, like I said, in the outskirts of Mercedes, and it's just a different world. Mid Valley is a different world than anywhere else, and not just in the Rio Grande Valley, but anywhere in the United States and anywhere in Texas. And so, about 14, about the age of 14 or so, I got my first computer and I was like, man, this is really cool. It'd be cool if it could connect to something. And I started learning about the internet, and I started learning about how connectivity happened. And my mom was a teacher here in McAllen for a long time at Jackson Elementary. And before that, she would teach at a couple different districts. I went to school out in Alton. She taught out in Alton. Basically, lots of these hood places, these great hood places. Shout out to Cantu Elementary, man. Anyway, but I always had this desire to see things get connected. And when my mom had access to this network called TENET, the Texas Educator Network, she had this dial-in number, and I was like, oh, this is great. And I found this thing called Gopher, and I found these libraries where I could go to the National Library of Congress and actually read things that were there, but from my house in Mercedes. And it was like, man, then all of a sudden these web pages, these things called web pages popped up. I was like, man, this is great. What year was this? Oh God, this was like 94, 92, somewhere. Yeah, 92 to 94 around there. And I was like, dude, this is really interesting. And it dawned on me that the access to the resources that I had, even then, I had moved from the Colonia into the south side of the city in Mercedes, still in Mercy Town, man, Queen City, even the resources that I had were resources that people that I grew up with didn't have. And I was like, man, imagine what it would be like if everybody had equal access to this stuff. And that started it. That started that passion. So I went and I helped build some internet service providers in the Rio Grande Valley. And I noticed that, even at that time, Highline Internet Services was the name of one of the first companies I worked with. And we had educator discounts where we could give discounts to people who were teachers and for police, fire, EMS, and stuff like that. But it started to, even at that time, it started to show that there was a segmentation in the people who had access and those who didn't have access. And back then it wasn't a big deal because it was a nice to have. It wasn't a need to have, Right. It was like, oh yeah, I was on, CompuServe or whatever. And you can, download stuff and play games and whatever. And then, those who had it, you could email and get on AIM, right? whoo, trash cans blowing up outside.
By the way, we also have a hummingbird in here. I might get crapped on.
You need to. Did you put popcorn by the window?
I did, yeah.
I don't know if hummingbirds like popcorn. Maybe a flower might be nice.
I don't know, man.
Anyway, so what I noticed is like even at an early age, man, even early in the internet, the valley started to have the haves and the have-nots, and there's no middle ground when it comes to something as binary as access. Either you have it or you don't have it.
Right.
And we tried to figure out programs where we could get access to people who didn't have the financial means to get it. Educator discounts for teachers. Obviously educators always have a special place in my heart. But a lot of us there, we wanted to make sure that we could provide the resources to the people who needed it the most. Well, as the world grew and as internet access grew, what you ended up with was what is referred to today as the digital divide. And so the digital divide is basically anyone who has access and those who don't have access. That delta between the two is not just the division of who has access or who has connectivity, but it's who can take advantage of all of the services that come with it. So, I mean, when's the last time you stood in line for something that you couldn't have done online? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's everything from healthcare and telemedicine to voter registrations to, I mean, everything. Paying your water bill, everything is available online. And the problem is that if you don't have access to that, you start to get left behind. And so you get a whole community of people that are left behind because they don't have it for some reason or another.
What percentage of the Rio Grande Valley is that divide? Like, what is that look like?
So the numbers, there's all these interesting numbers, right? And there hasn't been a study in the last couple of years, but the big study that shook everyone was that there was a 37% take rate to broadband access in the Rio Grande Valley. And so what that means is that even though it's available in about 100% of the areas in the Rio Grande Valley, only 37% of the people actually subscribe to those services. So, and let me quantify that, right? Because there's a lot of hate that comes with that statement. People are like, well, we don't have broadband access everywhere. I mean, they do. Starlink right now, for example, I could take my Starlink satellite and go anywhere in the Rio Grande Valley and have 300 megabit per second internet service. It's $100 a month, and it cost me $500 to buy the Starlink kit, but that doesn't mean I can't get it. T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, for the most part, cover a lot of the areas that we live in. 100 megabit service, 30 megabit service. It's available. Can people afford the plans that it requires to do that? Spectrum is available in ubiquitously in just about every major area down here, but people just can't afford it. And so what you end up with is in the Rio Grande Valley alone, that 37% number that's a few years old was super impactful in the sense that it's like, well, why doesn't everybody have it? There must be something wrong. The three most disconnected cities in the United States, do you know what they are?
I have no idea.
Pharr, Harlingen, and Brownsville.
In the United States?
In the United States, right?
Wow.
So those were, and that was up until last year. So, and we'll talk about that, right? So you have in the Rio Grande Valley, it's not just a digital divide. I mean, it's a chasm, right? Down here where the haves and the have-nots are so separated that people started to pay a lot of attention to it. And they started to say, well, what can we do to make it better? And across the nation, we're seeing this, right? This isn't just down here. This is, Native Americans. This is any tribal lands. It's same thing. Tribal lands where no one went and was like, oh, we're going to run fiber onto the, right, onto the reservation, right? So that no one thought about that, right? And not just the colonias here in South Texas, although they are the most affected, right, in the United States, but any low income area outside of a major metropolitan city, has these problems. There's some crazy statistics that I was looking up, and I'm gonna use my phone because I was reading this and I was like, damn. I mean, it's fascinating. Okay, so check this out. So it's about rural Texas and about how rural Texas is disproportionately affected by that, right? So almost 2.8 million Texas households and 7 million people lack broadband access as of 2022. So a year ago, right? Either because the infrastructure doesn't reach their homes or because they're not subscribed to that service. So 96, according to Governor Abbott's Broadband Development Council, which is a phenomenal thing that he's put together, politics aside, like I have my own viewpoints politically, but the fact that we're focusing on broadband, it doesn't matter who you vote with, like it doesn't matter Republican, Democrat, that's an issue, like period. Independent as well, like that's an issue. And I'm glad to see that there's some light being shown on that, especially we've got a representative. I know we have one representative from the Rio Grande Valley that's a part of that. Mr. Alonso Cantu is a part of the Broadband Development Council, which is great. Talk about someone who's invested in the valley. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
96.78% of households in Texas have access to broadband speeds. However, 286,908 households remain unserved of that service. And of those, about 247,000 are in rural Texas. It means that 692,000 rural Texans cannot access broadband at home compared to the 100,000 urban Texans that can. So rural Texans represent roughly 85% of all Texans who cannot access broadband. Wow. Interesting. Lots to digest there, right? So what you have is basically what it's calling out there is that rural Texas has an issue. Dude, the valley is rural Texas. Like, for as much as people want to think that we're some big area that McAllen's, the meta, right? No, this is just everything. McAllen, for the most part, even the outskirts are still considered rural. I mean, there's lots of rural areas that are here by definition. And so that gap, I mean, if you think about everything between McAllen and Harlingen, dude, you go 1 mile north and 1 mile south of Expressway 83, north and south of that, that's rural. That's rural Texas. And those are the people that don't have that connectivity. And it's not because they don't have it's not because they don't have the God, what's the right word? It's not because they don't have services that are available to them. It's because they don't subscribe to it. It's because they don't subscribe to it because maybe they can't subscribe to it. And this is a long, I'm giving you lots of content, right?
Well, that's like the affordability issue then.
So this is where it becomes the affordability issue. Absolutely. And what happens is in the Rio Grande, and I should have done my research before I came in. I mean, we can just look it up, right? When you look at the Rio Grande Valley and you look at the median household income in some of these places, let's type it up. Let's use the internet. Median household income, pick a city, man.
Just put McAllen.
No. Pick a smaller city.
Far.
No, smaller. Let's go Alamo.
Alamo.
Let's check out median household income in Alamo, Texas, right? According to city data. Average household income in Alamo is $51,000 with a poverty rate of 36%. Okay. Median age is 31 for males, and they have a high population that's over the age of 65. So what does that tell us, right? There's a lot of interesting things there. 50 grand a year, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, 50 grand.
50 grand a year. Okay, let's break that down, right? $50,000 a year is how much a month? Like $4 grand a month?
Yeah, around.
Say okay, then this is all before taxes, right? So $4 grand a month. Let's pull some taxes out there. Let's say it's $3,500 a month. Let's say it's $3,000 a month, right? You've got house, which is going to be $500 to $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So let's bring it down to $2,500. Then you're at $2,500 a month. You've got food, which is going to be a couple $100 a week, maybe $200 a week, $100 a week.
Yeah.
I don't know what the household budgets are, but let's say it's $200 a week, right? So $200 a week, that's another $800. So that brings us down to like $1,700 a month. $1,700 a month. You got gas you got to put in your car, right? So say $40 every time you got to fill up, $60 every time you got to fill up. That's another, $240. So it slowly starts to get down. Before you know it, you're sitting at less than $1,000 a month of expendable income in some way, shape, or form. And that's like on a good day.
On a good day.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's not including clothes and, heaven forbid, healthcare. Getting a flat tire. There were some interesting statistics done by the community advisory board I'm a part of with UT Health Science Center in Brownsville, and it was showing that something like 90% of the Rio Grande Valley can't afford to have a flat tire.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean the statistics in our area are staggering, and when you think about it, there's a lot of people in McAllen, and there's a lot of people in Harlingen and Brownsville that doesn't affect, mm-hmm. right? Which is great for them, but you can't ignore the people that does affect.
Right.
And the problem is that when you start to say, well, you know what, this family has $300 a month in income that they can use. Well, I mean, what's your cell phone bill? What's your cable bill? What's your, think about all the little things just this morning. And, again, I'm lucky enough to be able to say, I didn't actually get a Starbucks coffee this morning. I made my coffee at home, but just this morning, if I think of, I might have spent $20, and maybe in a day I might spend, anywhere between $20 and $100 on stupid stuff, to be honest. There's the people that don't have that expendable income are in a situation where they have to make every dollar count. They have to make every dollar maximized. Okay, so where does broadband rank on that chart, right? And how high does it rank? And more importantly, what we saw during COVID was you had a lot of students, who were going to school, but their parents had to figure out how to work. That weren't going to school and whose parents had to work.
Yeah.
So here, let me recut that for you. It's during COVID. So during COVID, you had a lot of students that were stay at home, but the parents still had jobs. And what happened was the parents would leave and the kids would be left to fend for themselves in one way or another, or they would go to their grandma's house, right? And so anyone who's listening, raise your hand if your abuela cares about internet access, right? No, they don't care. They don't care about broadband and Wi-Fi and Roku and all this other stuff, Teams, Zoom, They don't care. So what we saw was this disproportionate amount of students who lost their connectivity because they were going to places that either lived on a fixed income or that lived because their sons and daughters were paying for them to live in the house that they lived in. Ultimately we saw these issues with affordability crop up huge, because now when everybody needed it, it was like, okay, well, who has it and where is it? The problem that we have in the Rio Grande Valley, like we just showcased in Alamo, is that even though it's available to everybody who lives here, it's the amount of people that can actually pay to consume those services that subscribe to it. A lot of people use their phones. I'm staring at my phone, right? A lot of people just use their phones to get online. And there's been all these studies done where it's like, is that an appropriate way for a kid to do homework like this? Like with their nose buried in the phone. How does that affect their ability to take a test? How does that affect their ability to learn? And granted, the new generation is changing a lot of that because they're native to those things. But when you get in this weird element where people aren't those digital natives, the ones who are in high school and junior high who were affected by COVID, that affected them. That affected their ability to learn, to understand, and to be productive, students. And so what you have is that you have these people, these groups of people who can't or won't afford internet access, even though it's available. And now we're seeing how detrimental that can be to those students and to those families. And more importantly, also to those adults and to those senior citizens. So that whole term digital divide has now taken this shift. It's no longer a digital divide. It's also a data divide. And that goes back to voting. That goes back to, look at what just happened at McAllen Memorial High School last week, right? Do you know about what happened? It's terrible, man. Yeah. Freaking school goes into lockdown. They say that there's a school shooter. There's cops running up and down with AR-15s. People are going crazy. The school didn't mail home a letter to any parent that said, hey, your kid was in danger, right? How did people find out about it? Yeah, TikTok, media, man, internet, Yeah. And if the parents didn't know that was happening because they're not on TikTok, or the grandparents who have to pick up the kid didn't know that was happening, then how informed are they? And that's just one tiny example. Then you start to get into everything else. Look at.
That's the speed of the internet. That's a very interesting
immediacy.
Thing too.
Yeah. And look at elections, right? Look at every text message that you get about an event that's happening, a social event, a civic event. Look at the way that everybody is now assuming that everyone has connectivity, right? And when you do that, you have to also look at the group of people that are going to miss out on that. So as the world moves closer to being completely connected, those that are left behind, it's not just that they're left behind on one or two things. They're left out of the conversation. They're left out of being able to take advantage of the healthcare, to take advantage of telemedicine. They're left out of being informed. God, I mean, look at our elections. Look at the drama that's going on just in politics right now. And imagine this, the only source of news that they get is a source of news that's one of the most radical sides on either side of it. They don't have any way to check that. They don't have any way to counterbalance that. And what's happening is this whole group of people is being alienated. And unfortunately, it affects us in the Rio Grande Valley more than it does anywhere else, because we have some of the lowest broadband penetration rates. We have some of the lowest take rates when it comes to this. So
then this has to be a long-term play, right, for these companies that are coming in, because right now inflation is going to happen. It's already
happening.
So there's no way that these people are going to be able to afford anything else. You have to work more just to afford this exact same things.
That's right. I mean, and again, I told you I was going to talk forever, so but you can cut it however you need. But yeah, I mean, we're not going to stop, right? We're not going to stop moving forward. I heard a really interesting comment yesterday. I'm following all the AI stuff super close.
Same here, man.
God, it's fascinating. Have you seen the Kanye video?
I know,
dude. So there's this guy. I'll show it to you after all this, right? There's this guy who was looking at the power of voice AI, and he said, hey, he goes, check this out. There's a model of Kanye West. There's an AI trained model of Kanye West. And he says, man, it blew my mind when I stopped to think about the implications of what this is and how it can affect the music industry. He says, so I wanted to try it out. So he got the model for Kanye. And he's like, look, I'm not a rapper, but I'm going to spit some bars. And so he's like, I put together 8 bars, like we're going to do this. And he says this rap that was like anti-Kanye, which is kind of funny because I'm not the biggest Kanye fan in the world. But so he's like, he spits this rhyme about Kanye. And he's like this white guy, right? And so it doesn't sound anything like Kanye West, but there's a beat that he found online that kind of sounds like a Kanye beat. And so he takes that, he runs it through the deal, and then he's like, all right, let's check it out. And he hits play, and dude, it sounds like Kanye West.
Wow.
And it's talking about how the bad decisions he's made and like all this.
Well, let's stay on that subject, because artificial intelligence has been fascinating to me ever since I started using ChatGPT back in January, and I sat with it for 2 to 3 hours a day just to learn it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very interesting thing because it's a tool.
It's a tool.
It's a tool to help your productivity, but a lot of people see, like, they look at it and they're like, nah, it's not you. No, but it doesn't matter because the future is going too fast.
It's so great. And that's where I was going with this, is that one of the things the guy says in the video, he does it and he's like, oh my, he's like blown away. He says, oh my gosh, this is better than I thought it would be. And I was reading about it and watching that video, and he says, this is the worst that AI will ever be, which is mind blowing considering how good it is. And, his implications are just to fall down that rabbit hole. He says, imagine a time when Lady Gaga decides that she's going to train a model of her voice and she's going to make it available. And let's say that your wife is a hell of a songwriter, but she's got a terrible, I don't know. I mean, I love your wife. I don't know if she has a terrible voice or not. She's a great dancer. I know that much. But in all fairness, for anyone who doesn't know, his wife was my daughter's ballet teacher. Yes. So there we go. Let me clarify that real quick.
Not a dancer somewhere else.
Let's just not go down that road. Also, I told my kid I was hanging out with your son, with his friend's dad all day today. So that's, our kids are in the same school. So where your wife works. Anyway, so now that I've gone off on that tangent, imagine Kathy's got like this incredible ability to write a song, but like the voice of like that voice in Little Mermaid, right? Imagine if she decides she's going to take that song and she's going to apply Lady Gaga's AI to it and make a song and upload it to Spotify. And then Lady Gaga gets compensated for using her voice, but your wife makes residuals also because it's her song that went out there.
Yeah.
Stop and think about how that changes the music industry.
Well, that's where the like, great thing of NFTs come into play.
Well, yes, because you have to have non-fungible, right? You have to
verified
have
ownership,
authenticity.
Yeah.
But hold on. I mean, is that better or worse? Because then, I mean, it's mind blowing to stop and think about the implications of this when you don't just think about voices of music. Think about everything else. Dude, you're telling me that if Morgan Freeman trained a voice, an AI deal of his voice, and all of a sudden he could be the narrator to everything.
Yeah.
Dude, and he was making residuals and you're making residuals. I mean, come on, man. Like you would have him doing your intro. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
An
interesting thing too is I was in New York last week, and I saw a telemedicine place that I was getting ads for it on Facebook. It was just a screen. So you go in there, the screen diagnoses you. You go into a room, you take your clothes off. The screen literally does everything. It's with artificial intelligence. And then when the doctor, the clinician is ready, they'll come in and they'll do the thing, and you're out. Like, it's literally all online, dude. It's like probably like the size of the studio. Like, it's
like a little
small.
10 by 10.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's already happening.
It's, I saw some of those at CES this year. I saw some of the artificial intelligence, not diagnosis, but people, where you want to go talk to a therapist, right? So your therapist is AI generated. I saw what you did with Raquel, by the way. I mean, it's like you're spot on with that. You want to go see a therapist who listens only to you, who knows everything about you. Well, you give them all your medical information, you train them, and it's basically Chat GPT with the face, and giving you proper diagnosis.
The crazy thing about that is you can use that open source software. Like, talk about that, because we can literally make an app that can do that
right now. Yeah,
open source.
There's a company that started in the Valley and to watch them grow has been tremendous. There's a company called Codism. You know those guys?
Yeah.
Have you seen what they did recently with?
No,
oh my God, dude! So Oriel's like a kid. He's just younger than I am. He's not a kid. Another level, right? What they did is they were like, man, ChatGPT is great, and all these other things are great, but what would happen if you combine all of them and you made this deal? And so he wrote this, I don't know, middleware. He wrote this program on his website that I forgot the name of, so I can't plug it. But he wrote this deal where lawyers, for example, you go in and you feed one of the AI engines, the neural networks, you feed it all of your documents, and everything goes in there. And then another one comes in and it goes and it keywords everything and it finds it. And then you can use something like Chat GPT to be an oral interface for it, where you can be like, get on your phone and say, okay, show me all the case documents relating to, Josh Moroles. And it populates it. So instead of having to go search and use this and whatever, it uses AI in context to specific applications or specific data sets.
Interesting.
Yeah. So stop and think about if you had an AI engine for you, right? Or for me, that knew that scraped all my social media, that scraped all of that stuff, but also went through all my personal text messages and went through all my notes, and then I can feed it my medical records and everything else, so that now I have an AI interface to myself.
Wow.
Where when I want to ask a question, it's not, man, remember that time? Remember that time we were in Austin and we were eating at that restaurant with the sushi? Imagine being able to ask yourself that. Imagine being able to ask a better version of yourself that and get an immediate response, including pictures and maps and photos and all the content.
How do you feel like that's going to make the human race?
Oh,
do you think it's just be like, all right, here?
Well, so to tie this back though, man, we're talking about some stuff that's like so far. It's not far-fetched. This is what's happening right now. This isn't like crazy. These aren't crazy thoughts.
Well, the technology is exponential. It's crazy.
The quicker it grows, the quicker it grows. Yeah. It's like that country music song. The more I drink, the more I drink. Well,
the thing is,
grows and grows and grows.
Elon Musk just came out with a letter. Did you hear about that? So he came out with a letter.
Saying slow down
at least for 6 months. And Friedman, no, it's not Friedman. Is the one from open source.
Yeah,
he was like, he agrees. He's scared.
They're all
AI.
going. Wait a minute.
So what do you foresee going on like in the next 6 months, especially with like inflation and China and all this Russia?
Man,
dude, it's a very particular place where United States is.
Yeah,
and the implementation of artificial intelligence. Like, what does that look like in your head?
It's and also to tie it back to this conversation that brought me in the door here is that, man, we're talking about things that people can consume and they can use to make their lives seemingly better. Let's be optimistic and let's say that all these things are going to have a net positive effect. It's only for the people that can consume them. It's only for the people that can use them. And if we look at the Rio Grande Valley, there's still a substantial amount of people here that they can't even access them to use them. They don't have the connectivity to be able to get online because they can't afford it. And that's a travesty, right? And that's, to jump back into that real quick, it's when you look at initiatives like the city of McAllen to provide Wi-Fi across the city, not for $10 a month or $5 a month, but for free. Like, just do it for free. I mean, I don't think everyone understands the impact that Mayor Jim Darling had on the city of McAllen and on the future generations of the city of McAllen. And I say that because the way that entire project came about was by using the mayor's discretionary fund. And so every year the city of McAllen, the mayor has a little kitty that they can use to stamp their mark on the city, and he had saved up some money for that. And the good news is that I believe it's been reimbursed. I think it's been reimbursed, but that didn't stop them from doing it, which to me was great. They said, we're going to use mayor discretionary fund. We're just going to buy it. And if we get reimbursed, great, even better. And so that's what they did. And that project has allowed people to have connectivity all in different pockets all over the city of McAllen. And there's not a student in the city right now that either doesn't have Wi-Fi outside of their home, that doesn't have the ability to subscribe to low-cost services using something like an ACP voucher, or that can't pick up a hotspot to take home. And what that's going to do for the students, I hear the hummingbird. What that's going to do for the students in McAllen ISD is tremendous, not just for today, but for all these generations further down the line, right? To see FAR jumping in and having an initiative like they have is tremendous. Do I think there are pros and cons? Absolutely. Do I wish it was all free? Absolutely. Have I told the mayor that? Absolutely. I hope Amos is listening. I think that they're on the right path there. Brownsville has been talking about doing something forever. That's all I'm going to say about that. Just keep talking and talking and talking. All these other communities are having conversations, but there are very few that are moving forward to give opportunity to the people that live in their communities.
So what does that look like then from a standpoint of, like, if I was the mayor, how would I connect my whole city? Well, what does that process look like?
I mean, look, I'm biased, right? Because I have in full transparency, I have a consulting company that focuses on doing this for people.
So lay out a business plan for a mayor. Like, this is what you do. This is how you do it.
I told someone the other day, I love being from the Valley, and I don't get on TikTok very often. I'm not, because I'm 45, bro. I mean, it's like, that's why I don't get on TikTok. Like, not because I don't like it or because China, it's because I'm 45. I don't get on TikTok. I mean, so I get on it the other day and I saw this barbecue guy from Austin talking about things that you say from the Rio Grande Valley, like muy muy, like, oh, look, you're a muy muy. Things I had forgotten about, dude. Cagging the stick, that's a good one. That was one of my favorites in high school. But one of the sayings was papitas, right? Papitas. And so a friend of mine asked me yesterday, I was on a phone call. He says, well, how difficult is it really to do this? I says, papitas, bro. Like, it's not difficult as long as you have the right people in place to get it done.
So what does that look like then? What is the right people?
So the thing is, man, is Chingo, you're going to get me going off on a tangent about fiber optic cables. But here's the thing, man. There is a connectivity issue in the sense that people don't have it. But it's not because there's not access there. Again, I believe it's an affordability issue, right? And so if people can't afford it, then you need to figure out a way to get it to them in a way that they can afford. Running fiber optic cables to somebody's house so that they have to, either rent or use or purchase a device to convert fiber optic to wireless is one cost. Having a device that can take advantage of that, a computer, a laptop, or something that a student can learn on, that's another cost. The education associated with understanding how to use that device to take advantage of the connectivity, that's another cost. And it's not just money. That's time, that's effort, that's skills. There's a lot there. And then once you have all of that, using it to get a better education or to get a better job or to increase, workforce development in some of these communities, that's a whole different thing. And so our problem in the Rio Grande Valley isn't just connectivity. This is the Channel 5 asked me, is another fiber provider coming into the Rio Grande Valley going to solve our connectivity problem? Absolutely not. It's great. It's great that they're here. It's great that they're making a $200 million investment in the Rio Grande Valley. I applaud anyone who does that. But the problem isn't just holding up a fiber going, here you go.
Right.
There's the internet. Well, what now, man? And unless you have all of those things covered, you can't truly say that we've solved the issue. So my thought process on this is that if it has to be economical, it has to be reliable, it has to be able to cover an entire city in those, confines, and it has to be usable, then why not go with something that fits into that category? And again, I'm biased. Find me at wirelessnerd.net. I'm a wireless guy. And I look at the way that everybody's connecting today on their cell phone, either via 5G or 4G or Wi-Fi. And I say, well, if everybody already has those devices and everybody already knows how to do that, and it's cheaper for me to cover a 5 square mile area with wireless than it is with fiber, why isn't anybody looking at that as an option? And I've gotten pushback from the entire industry. This isn't just a Valley conversation. This is everywhere. Well, it's not as reliable. Okay. You're telling me your cell phone's not reliable? Like, sometimes it has coverage gaps depending on where you're driving or whatever. But imagine it had a good signal and you stuck it on a sticky outside of your house and it never moved. Would it be reliable then? Oh, well, yeah. Well, okay, that's what we're talking about, in scenarios like that. So the reliability factor is gone. The speed factor is gone. I can do 100 megabit, 200 megabit per second on these devices, right? Today, for the common household, even with the most advanced virtual reality applications, 25 megabit up, 25 megabit down, 25 millisecond round trip latency. That's the rule of thumb that we used at Meta to define a capable connection for VR. So that's great. We can talk about 100 megabit, 300 megabit, gigabit. Oh, gigabit. Yeah, that's great. That's great. But right now, to get people online who have nothing, if I can provide a service to a city at a fraction of the cost that gets everybody a broadband quality service in their homes, and I can do it in 60 days or less, that solves your problem. The problem, it's easily solvable. And okay, so you don't have the network administrators and you don't have the people who know how to run it and the people who use it. Dude, my company is one of many companies in the world that can do that for you. And I'm tired of people making excuses for not solving the problem that affects our communities down here in the RGV.
I think at that point, it becomes an educational type of thing because people just don't know.
Is it?
I think it is because I think a lot of people are not aware of the things that are out there. They're so focused on what they're trying to achieve with their job, but they just don't know.
It's and that's pompous of me, right? Because I live and breathe it every day. I just assume everybody knows about it.
Same here. Yeah, same here. It's like no, it's
I just
not.
assume people know what 4G is or 5G.
Let's talk about the skills that will come from connectivity because I think that's
huge. That's
the most important part. Is like, okay, we have the connectivity. You get everybody connected. You're getting them learning. Mm-hmm. What are these jobs that they can have in the future? Because am I wrong for thinking that the Rio Grande Valley is already making plays to bring in bigger companies, and these bigger companies are going to need the workforce. And they're going to find skilled people.
You got to. I mean, you're one person who has been instrumental in this has been Alex Mead. Do you know Alex? Yeah. Alex is some of the things that he brought when he was over at the Mission EDC, and even before that, some of the questions that he brought to the table that he helped find the answers for were tremendous, right? And to see him doing what he's doing now and knowing that he's got a heart in the Valley is incredible. And Julian, who is the Texas Workforce Commissioner, same thing. The guy's from the Valley, and he knows what the Valley needs in order to be impactful. And so one of the things that they focused on that resonates is building the bench, right? It's like a sports team, right? Building the bench. When you bring in companies, Zoho announced their stuff. We've got Zoho down in South McAllen, and they're talking about doing some other stuff in McAllen, a 90-acre campus, all these great deals where people are talking about making technology investments in the Rio Grande Valley. You have to have people on your bench that can fill those positions. And that's what we focused on at Code RGV. We focused on building the bench. Like that literally was that's what we wanted to do. And so that's where we went to Texas Workforce Commission, and we went to the governor and we said, hey, give us some funds let us help build better nerds and bring these nerds in so that when those companies do come in, we have opportunity for them.
What's that time frame that you think that will happen?
We invested, a good 4 years into doing workforce development that is now showing signs of success. And maybe in the last 2 years, it's shown signs of success. And on a 10-year plan, I would say we spent the first 4 years just really sowing the seeds, right? And then years 5 and 6 is when they started to show a little bit. 7 and 8 really is when they started to play. And now that we're in 9 and 10, we're starting to see the benefits of it. I ran into a guy this morning at Target, and he was buying a coffee, and he was, Javier, he was one of my instructors at Code RGV. He's one of the network administrators at Texas Regional Bank, and it's great to see. I mean, a friend of mine named Mike Hilton, Mike came in as a student and now he's working at Apple, a bunch of kids down here who are working for Cisco, who are working for all these different companies who got their start in the Code RGV program, cybersecurity analysis. Or analysts. It's so great to see my LinkedIn blow up with these people who were students of ours who are now landing their second and third jobs in the cybersecurity industry, making $150,000, $170,000 a year.
Let's pause right there because I think you're touching on something very interesting. And I have this conversation with a lot of people because I come from a place where I like to learn stuff. I like to get skills and I like to implement the skills. But people are always asking, well, how do you make more money? Or how do you make money, period?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's skills. Skills, period.
Man, yeah, well, a lot of, it's a freaking Napoleon Dynamite's in my head. I got baseball skills, I got football skills, I got IT security service skills. No, it's one of those skills, to be totally honest, is this.
Yeah.
Being able to talk to people, man. You can't, the soft skills component of all of this cannot be overlooked. I can teach anybody how to code. I can teach you how to code right now. I can teach you how to do Wi-Fi. I can teach you so many different things. But if you can't take that and turn that into a conversation about getting a job or about advancing yourself, it's going to be, all that education is going to go to waste. Nowadays, when you're applying for a job, your resume is not enough. I don't even know who uses resumes anymore. I got someone sent me a resume yesterday and said, hey, can you take a look at my resume and make sure it's up to speed? I was like, I don't want your resume. Go put it on your LinkedIn like a normal human being. You know what I mean? Like, it's the days of resumes, in my opinion, are just gone. Some places are going to ask you to submit one, but you can also print out your LinkedIn profile as a PDF and you can submit that. Having the skills to get the job done that's only half the battle, man. You have to be able to present yourself in a way that shows that you're the right person for that job. And COVID, man, it really affected people's ability to communicate with human beings and being able to sit in front of someone and have a conversation. My daughter's 11 years old, man. She went through, your kids too, right? Yeah. We went through COVID where our kids were at home, and we're at a birthday party yesterday, and my daughter was off on her own. We're like, man, just go hang out with your friends or whatever. And she's like, they're busy talking. We're like, well, just go be a part of the conversation. And it dawned on us that in some of those very formative years where you teach kids how to be around groups of people, there's so many kids that just don't understand how to interact with each other, because the years that they were supposed to learn that, they were all at home
and doing drive-by birthday parties.
Dude, for real. Oh my God, remember those?
Yeah, I actually kind of like those.
That's not a bad idea, right?
but yeah, it's an interesting thing.
But all of the education in the world can't take the place of being able to have a conversation with someone. And again, I'm biased on that because my job is very conversational based. It's about identifying where problems are, where gaps are, and solving those issues for people. That's what I do for a living, But I look at that in every topic I get into where someone asks me to do a mentorship or do a training or talk to students, I talk to them about being able to have a conversation with people. That's it, man. Because if we all go to the same school and we all learn the same thing and we're all as accredited as each other, what's going to make you stand out? We have this conversation, I've got 5 kids, right? I have this conversation, it feels like daily. Like, what's going to make you different when you're competing against other students for an internship or for a scholarship? What makes you any better than the person right beside you? If you can make the person laugh, genuinely and have a good time, and you can strike up a personal relationship and the other people can't, you win.
Yeah.
You know, and being able to articulate that, who you are and why you're the correct person, I think is absolutely key to success, right? Skills are important. It's great. It's great to know what you're doing, but you have to be able to prove it, right? The other thing is network, man. I mean, it comes back so many times. It's so much about who you choose to spend your time with and how you choose to spend your time with them. And it's the echo of my dad's voice saying, well, you are who you hang out with. Yeah. I mean, kind of true. And especially in the case of getting ahead in technology, for example, surround yourself with people that